What is the most bitter thing you've ever tasted? Something that you've tasted just makes your face wrinkle up and you say, ugh. What is the most bitter thing that you've ever drunk? What's the most bitter thing that you've ever drunk? Tequila? Vinegar? Ooh. Castor oil? They were saying at the 9 o'clock Mass. Castor oil? I've never tasted that. No offense to the coffee drinkers among us. Anyone drink coffee?
Oh, yeah.
I never drank coffee my whole entire life till about 5 years ago. And when I tasted it, oh, it was bitter. Think of the most bitter thing you've ever tasted, because in today's gospel, Jesus asks his friends, can you drink from the cup that I drink from? Because the cup that Jesus drank from wasn't filled with good tequila, if you know what I mean. It was something that if you drank from that cup, you would wrinkle your face and spit it out. It was a cup of suffering. Do you remember on his last night before his death, when he was praying in the Garden of Gethsemane, what did Jesus say? Lord, take this, what away from me? This cup. Lord, take this cup away from me, because that cup was symbolic of suffering, the cup of suffering, which is why in today's gospel, Jesus asked his friends, can you drink this cup of suffering that I drink from? Because I'm going to suffer. Are you willing to suffer? How's that for a question? The good news is, for those of us who follow in the footsteps of Jesus as Christians, as Catholics, the good news is that we believe that suffering is not the end of the story, that all the suffering that we endure during our lives leads us to glory. Amen? In today's first reading, the prophet Isaiah gives us that hope. Prophet Isaiah refers to the people of Israel as the suffering servants. Yes, you're suffering in exile now, but I've got good news. The suffering is going to end. And the next chapter, when you turn the page, is going to be even brighter and more glorious. We'll put away the cup of suffering, and what we drink is going to be a celebration. Like mother, like son. Have you ever thought about Jesus and where Jesus got some of the ideas that Jesus had? Because St. Luke would lead us to believe that Jesus got some of those ideas from his mom, from Mary. Have you heard how the Gospel of Luke begins? With this story of Mary being pregnant and talking about how the world is going to turn. Things are going to turn upside down. If things are a certain way now, be on the lookout, because the world's going to be flipped upside down. So if you're powerful and rich now, got news for you, watch out, because when the Lord comes in the Lord's glory, the rich and the powerful are going to be cast down, and the poor and the humble are going to be lifted up. And yet, what do we find in today's gospel? Are the disciples, the friends of Jesus, trying to be poor and humble so as to be lifted up? No. They're arguing over who's going to be the greatest. Jesus, when we get to heaven, promise me one thing, that I can sit on your right and my brother can sit on your left. We want to be right beside you in the bleachers of heaven. Jesus said, y'all are smoking crack. You have no idea what you're saying. Can you drink this cup of suffering that I drink? Are you willing to suffer like I suffer? And if so, then maybe you should start suffering a little now by being a servant. Instead of trying to put yourselves here, try to put yourselves here, serving others, so that when the world turns, what will happen? Then you'll be on top in the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven belongs to those who serve and are poor and are humble. How's that for a strong message? Any parents in the crowd? If so, you know what it's like to be a servant. Amen? You've done things that are far from glorious. Amen? Right? The diapers that you've changed. Oof. Oof. The vomit that you've cleaned up. Oof. the laundry that you've done, the dishes, the cleaning that you've done, right? That's a sacrifice. And I use that word intentionally because the word sacrifice comes from a fancy Latin word, sacrificere, which means what? To make holy. Every time we do a sacrifice, we're growing in holiness. Every time we sacrifice ourselves and place ourselves in the position of serving others, then that makes us holy. Brothers and sisters, that can be a bitter cup, amen? Having to serve, it's not so much a cup that we would prefer, if given the opportunity. Let's keep in mind this week and during the weeks and months to come that all the suffering that we do endure, it's bitter, but it's also contributing to our salvation and preparing us for when the world turns and our enjoying with Christ and all who've gone before us in the kingdom of heaven.